To me, Raiders fans are a family, and I want you to help us get this family a little bit bigger. We're 211 subs away from 196,000. If you bleed silver and black, join the Raiders Sport family and hit that subscribe button. Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, ESPN linked 3 big-name NFL free agents to the Las Vegas Raiders today. I'm Mitchell Renz. You're watching the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to break down who those 3 free agents are. I'm also just going to sprinkle in just some of the little ins and outs that you need to know in terms of would Pete Carroll and John Spytek actually try to bring in somebody. So in terms of the Raiders adding talent, there was an article released by ESPN and it was titled 5 Key Observations from 2025 Las Vegas Raiders minicamp. This article was written by Ryan McFadden, and he linked 3 free agents to the silver and black. And when you listen to the way McFadden kind of talked about his thought process from the Raiders, from the notes, and just everything that he gathered from those 3 days of mandatory minicamp, it kind of sounds like he believes that the Raiders should go out there and make a move. So on the docket today, I'm going to tell you why I could see the Raiders going out, signing a player. We're going to talk about which position group he thinks needs the most help, because all 3 of those free agents are outlined to one specific team need for this silver and black team. Let's first go to the reason here why I think that the Raiders could sign a player. You got to look at what Pete Carroll had to say, and you also got to think about the mentality of this football team. Does this team like what they have right now on the roster? Yes, abso-flippin'-lutely. But if Pete Carroll is throwing out comments like this, I think us Raider fans, we got to be able to pay attention to him. And here's what Carroll had to say on adding a player before training camp. You're either competing or you're not. We ain't letting up now. There's no time to turn away from having a chance to get a little bit better, so we'll be on it. And if I had to just decipher that coach speak there from Pete Carroll, I think it's exactly what everybody thinks it says. If we see an opportunity where we can get better, think of it as almost like a Jermaine Pratt, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity. Though, I don't really see the Raiders going out there and breaking the bank, which luckily for them is a good thing because they got $36.2 million in salary cap space. They have plenty of money to go out and get any single NFL free agent that they want on the market right now. Quite frankly, they could probably sign all 3 of the players that I'm about to mention right now. It would be tough, but you would be able to work around certain contracts if need be. The final reason here of why I could see the Raiders honestly going out and making a move, it's because look at their minicamp invites. And I'm not saying, look at the specific players in general. Yes, they brought in Jermaine Pratt. They ended up signing him. Yes, the Raiders brought in a guy like Shaquille Griffin. They brought him in on 2 days, June 11th and June 12th. They also brought in a gigantic offensive lineman that I talked about last week. But they brought in multiple players for visits, tryouts during minicamp, which simply tells me that they are at least looking, right? If Alex told me that she was going on a few dates, I would be worried about our marriage. And I'm just simply saying, if Pete Carroll and this regime is bringing people in, they are at least looking, which means they're at least in the market to add potential players. So the fact that the last significant visit, I would say, that the Raiders had, and it lasted 2 days, was Shaquille Griffin, that I think is a little bit telling of which direction I think the Raiders could potentially look in terms of just adding extra players to this roster, because we need more depth. If there's one thing that I really truly learned about last season's Raiders team is we had a good defense, starter-wise. But once the starters went down due to injuries, we had absolutely positively no depth. And I think Pete Carroll's going to do everything in his power to make sure that this team has a lot of depth. Before I get into which position group needs help and those 3 big free agents, if you don't already know, huge shout out to our sponsor here. And if you're looking for new Raiders gear, we got some on sale. Go to chatsports.com/Raider sale. Okay, that link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments and in the description of today's show. And actually, one of our watchers, his name's Jamari Murray, sent in the super chat earlier on today's show, and he had his little kiddo there in this Raiders onesie. If you're also looking for stuff, I know Father's Day was this past weekend, but sometimes after Father's Day, stuff is still on a really, really good sale price. So whether you need shorts, a t-shirt, or a little Raider outfit for your little guy, chatsports.com/Raider sale. Hats, anything you possibly need, It's all on sale at that link down below. So which position group does ESPN believe that the Raiders need to go out and they need to address? According to Ryan McFadden, it's this group. If they intend to add more competition, it wouldn't hurt to do so at cornerback. Las Vegas's depth there remains questionable with an unproven group across the board. And I fully agree with the fact that this is a very, very much so unproven group. You got a rookie in Darien Porter. You got a first rounder in Eric Stokes, though he's had some injury concerns his past few seasons. Jakorian Bennett, solid player, young guy coming off injury. Sam Webb, Kai Blue Kelly, Humphrey. You got Decamerion Richardson, Mello Dotson. There is not a lot of playing experience at all. And yes, you have a lot of confidence in a guy like Pete Carroll, but then we're also sitting here going, well, if the AFC West is as stacked as what we think the AFC West is, we got to make sure this defense is as solid as what it possibly is, because I also am concerned at the fact that our linebackers aren't the best at covering. I'm also worried that our safeties are kind of built a little bit more like strong safeties and not so much like free safeties. It's really, really important for this defense to assure that our cornerbacks are not only talented, but there's also a lot of depth there. So again, ESPN said Las Vegas had rookie Darien Porter and Eric Stokes as its first-team cornerbacks during the first-team period of OTAs and minicamp. However, Stokes, a first-round pick in 2021, has battled injuries throughout his career. And, let's look at the career here. This is what he's done from a career standpoint. And Eric Stokes is spelled with a C, not a K. That's on me. In 2021, he played in 16 games, missed 14, started 14, played 16, missed 1 game, okay? 2022, started missing some games. 2023, missed 14 games. Last season was able to be healthy, which is really important, and it's something that you love to see. But at the exact same time, we're looking at a sample size here of a player who's missed probably close to 33% of his games in his entire career. And we're trying to trust that guy that he can be a starter when the guy that he's kind of replacing is Jakorian Bennett, who also dealt with a lot of injuries last season. Keeping it moving here on why the Raiders should add a corner from Espen. Even though the Raiders value Porter's physical traits and upside, he started in only 7 games at Iowa State. In addition, Porter wasn't asked to play a ton of man coverage with the Cyclones. Iowa State lined up in man coverage on 32.4% of opponent dropbacks, compared to 57.1 in the zone. Since ESPN was throwing out those type of stats, I did want to be able to put this out here because as soon as I read it, I was like, well, the Raiders also run a lot of zone. So, I don't really think that should be thrown in there in terms of Darien Porter. So last season under Patrick Graham in 2024, the Raiders played zone on 65.2% of opponent dropbacks. So keep that in mind. 8th in the National Football League. So when a quarterback dropped back, the Raiders were dropping back into zone 65.2% of the time. Jakorian Bennett, who played with the second team along with Decamerion Richardson, flashed his ball skills, in 2024, but he's coming off a torn labrum that limited him to 10 games last season. Maybe Porter is better than expected in year 1, or the Raiders can unlock Stokes' full potential, but that's a big ask, which is why it makes sense to add another veteran into the room. So coming up here, I'm going to tell you the 3 big-name free agents that ESPN said that the Raiders should go out and try to get. Now, I hope that I did a halfway decent job here of illustrating why I think the Raiders could go out and make a move and why Pete Carroll thinks that they could make a move. I also hope that I did a good job illustrating the thought process of ESPN in this article. But the biggest reason why I want people to watch this show and how we started doing it is a lot of people have opinions. And I love everyone's opinion, but I also love to be able to give my opinion. This is an opinion-based show. If you don't know that by now, I don't know what to tell you. But here's your chance to get your opinion down below in the comments section. If the Raiders sign one player right now, I am going to make this the pinned comment here on today's show, which means you're going to get hit with a YouTube ad break, and I know it's a little bit later in the show than what we typically do, but hey, sometimes you got to switch it up here. So let me know who you think it should be if the Raiders could sign one player right now. Can't wait to see the answers. Now, I don't want to give away my answer because, to be real with you, the guy that I would sign if I was the Las Vegas Raiders is actually not in this show. He plays on the defensive line, which maybe you go check out on another video from this show, or I'm also going to make another one probably a little bit later in the week about a free safety. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hit that subscribe button. Let's talk about the 3 free agents, though, that ESPN linked to Las Vegas. The first name, Jaire Alexander. And I don't think there's any bigger name out there right now on the open market than Alexander, a two-time Pro Bowler who most recently had a great season in 2022 where he had 5 interceptions, 14 pass breakups, 56 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. The problem with Alexander is he was just released by the Green Bay Packers, and players that are this talented aren't typically released unless there's some issues along the line. Now, what I wanted to be able to do here is illustrate to you why the Raiders would and would not sign each player that I'm about to suggest. So to me, the reason why the Raiders wouldn't sign Alexander, it's because he did cause a lot of friction in that locker room before, and it was very well noted that Jaire was a selfish player, and multiple Packers players have said that. He also can't stay healthy. Missed 34 out of 68 games over the past 4 seasons, and when I just sit back and I think what the Raiders did this offseason, they didn't really go out and pay a lot, and for Alexander, he wanted more than $17 million. I don't know if the Raiders are going to be a team that gives him more than $17 million. Do I think other NFL teams potentially would? Yes, I do. So for those reasons, that's why the Raiders wouldn't sign Alexander. But I can imagine if you're watching this, you probably want to know why they would. And here's why I think the Raiders would. I actually think that Pete Carroll is the perfect coach for Alexander because Alexander needs somebody that, quite frankly, is able to sit him down the way that, honestly, my grandfather used to. And Pete Carroll is the perfect example of what a grandfather is. And you need a little bit of slice of humble pie. And I think for Jaire, he knows he's talented. But he also thinks that his shit doesn't stink. If I'm Pete Carroll, I'm going, Jaire, you're a phenomenal football player. But if you humble yourself a little bit, you listen to me a little bit, and you buy into what we're doing here, you can really turn into that great corner that people talk about getting $25 million. Just give me a chance to coach up here a little bit. He had a really solid relationship with Eric Stokes, and Stokes was really, when he got drafted by Green Bay, they told Stokes to watch Jaire, and they hung out a ton that first year. And I also know that the Raiders have the money. And if Jaire's healthy, he is the best cornerback on this team. I love Darien Porter. I have high hopes for Eric Stokes. You guys know that I think Jakorian Bennett was the best corner on this team last season. But, let's be honest with ourselves. If we could play Madden and you could turn injuries off and turn drama off, Jaire Alexander is the best cornerback on this Raiders team. And for that reason, with Pete Carroll, I do think it's an interesting combination. Let's go to another corner here that was linked to Las Vegas, and it's Mike Hilton. And Hilton, getting up there in age a little bit, coming off a solid year, 73 tackles, 1 interception, 5 pass breakups last season in Cincinnati with the Bengals. The one good part about Hilton, compared to Jaire, he's been able to stay on the field, and he's been able to stay healthy. Also, when you think about a lot of the reports around Hilton, is he's a great teammate, something that you haven't heard from Jaire. Now, in terms of why would the Raiders not sign Hilton, I would say one of the top reasons is age. He's going to be 31 years old, and I do think that the Raiders are looking to get younger at corner. They're also looking to put players that they believe can be a part of this thing for the long haul, and I don't know if Hilton is that type of guy. And I know the Raiders signed a lot of one-year contracts as well, and I think that's more for the younger prove-it-year players. But I also know that Hilton isn't a long, lanky cornerback that typically Pete Carroll likes. Yes, Hilton is a nickel, which is really important, but sometimes he does get taken off the field during man coverage. And if you're the Raiders, I get it. They only ran, man 35% of the time last season. But if you're the Raiders at this point, I'm looking for a player that I can trust almost every single snap out there on the field. Now, in terms of why would the Raiders go out and sign Hilton? And I think for anybody that watches this show, I would be on board for this. And I talked about it in a mailbag over the weekend because the Raiders need a nickel corner. And Hilton, to me, is the top nickel corner right now out there on the open market. Also, the Raiders, they just signed Jermaine Pratt, and we know how important relationships are to this regime, and Pratt was teammates with Hilton for the past 4 seasons. And then I also sit back and I go, well, if they signed Pratt, and what Pratt brought to the table was that veteran mentality, that veteran leadership, could you also do the exact same thing at corner where you look at that cornerback room, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I bet you if you were to sit down and look at that cornerback room and look at the average age, I bet you it's 24, 25 years old. I bet you the Raiders have one of the youngest cornerback rooms in the National Football League. So being able to go out and add a pros pro in Mike Hilton, and I know I've thrown this name out there multiple times on this show, but I can remember when the Raiders went out and they signed a guy by the name of, oh, Christ, no, I can't even think of it. Gus Bradley, defense, it was the safety, Casey Hayward. They went out, they signed Casey Hayward, and I was like, oh, he's old, he's washed, he's 31. Sometimes when you're just a good veteran and you know what you're getting yourself into, it can be just a good fit for everybody, and that's kind of the way I think Mike Hilton would be. But let's go to the final name here, and it's Rasul Douglas. Now, y'all know I'm a big Rasul Douglas fan, and I still carry this one with a little bit of chip on my shoulder because I'm pissed off that the Raiders even let Douglas go when they let him go. Here's the problem, though. I would say he's coming off one of the worst years of his career, and Douglas has done a lot of good things. He's bounced around from team to team, which I know is not an easy thing to be able to do. But when you just look at the numbers, you watch the tape, Douglas is coming off, let's face it, a little bit of a down year. And I think that could be one of the reasons why the Raiders do not go out and get him. 59.2 overall PFF grade last season. Also going to be 31 years old in August. And my other question is, we always talk about, would the Raiders want to go get this guy? Would Douglas want to become a Raider? Because I'll tell you this right now. If I was Rasul Douglas and I was sitting there going, y'all cut me the year that I had a Pro Bowl season. And I get it. Different coaching staff, different regime. But I would also carry a little bit of a chip on my shoulder against that Raiders organization. And the Raiders weren't the only team that honestly moved on from Douglas in that 2021 season. My point is, though, would Douglas actually want to be a Raider, seeing Eric Stokes signing, Darien Porter being brought in, knowing you have Jakorian Bennett? If I'm Douglas coming off the year that I did, I'm not trying to go to a team like the Raiders, quite frankly. But hey, I could be proven wrong. Now, why would I want to? I do think Pete Carroll is a perfect coach for Douglas. Long, lanky, he's physical, which is exactly what Carroll looks for in a cornerback. He also played with Eric Stokes from 2021 to 2023, so there is a little bit of that familiarity in there. Not going to cost a lot of money. Quite frankly, I think out of the cornerbacks that I've talked about in terms of Douglas, Hilton, and Jaire to me is probably looking for minimum $17 million. Mike Hilton, I think you could probably get somewhere around $5-6 million. And I think a guy like Douglas, you're going to be able to get for like $3, potentially $4 million. So if you're the Raiders and you want to go a little bit of a cheaper route, I do think Douglas might make the most sense. If you're just thinking about priority and biggest team need, I actually would say Mike Hilton. In a perfect world, Jaire Alexander is the one to go with. So that's why I can't wait to see the answers on this question. You could pick one to sign. Jaire Alexander, Mike Hilton, Rasul Douglas. Who you going with? My answer coming up here in just a moment. I'm going to sit up here and go Mike Hilton would be the name that I go out there and I get. And I only say that because it's based on need. And I believe that Mike Hilton also allows us the ability to then go out and potentially sign a free safety. There's no doubt in my mind Jaire Alexander has the highest upside. And, I might kick myself in the ass at the end of the season if Jaire goes out there and he has a phenomenal year. But I also think about what the Raiders are trying to preach. And what the Raiders are trying to teach is you play for the name on the front. That way it blesses the name on the back. And until Jaire proves to me that he cares about the team on the front, I don't really want to see him in silver and black. That's just how I feel. Reminder, if you made it this far in the video, we are doing a Raiders Report Fantasy Football League. 12-team lead. I might be able to be convinced to get it to 14. And we're going to be giving away 2 spots in the month of June. Whoever bangs the most this month, you're going to be in. Or if you're like Mitch, I can't watch the show live. It's all good. You can send in a $5 super thanks, or every $5 super chat you send while we are live, it is a raffle entry for your opportunity to get in. If you're trying to keep track of the June Bang race, Venthrak has really made up a lot of ground on Fabian Moreno with a hell of a day yesterday. And also, huge shot at the Bayou Raider. Both of those guys hit the gong yesterday during our live show. Patrick Roche, Common Raider. But Fabian Moreno right now leads the race. Whoever wins this June Bang race, you're automatically in the Fantasy Football League. If you made it this far in the show, again, you can always hit me up on IG. You can always hit me up on Twitter. I'm at MitchellRenz365. And when I first started doing this show, I always took articles, reports, rumors from other people outside of the organization, and I gave my 2 cents on it. Hopefully you see what ESPN was thinking and what ultimately I'm thinking, but I agree with Ryan McFadden that if I'm the Raiders, I am really trying to improve at the cornerback position. I disagree a little bit with Jaire. I wouldn't be mad with the Alexander signing. I wouldn't be mad with Rasul Douglas, but the guy that I think that makes most sense for this team right now, Mike Hilton.